Center Maine is partnering with the Maine-Monitor to bring you some of the reporting being done by journalists at the nonprofit independent publication. We'll be featuring one of their stories each Monday, and today we're talking about carbon credits. Forest carbon credits are becoming more popular here in Maine, but as the voluntary carbon market picks up, some people in the industry are worried that small family forest industries won't have the same access as maybe larger corporations. So here to expand on that is Julia Tilton, a contributor with the Maine-Monitor. Thanks so much for coming in, Julia.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Okay, let's dive right in. Forest carbon credits, first off, what are they and why are they gaining traction here in Maine?
Forest carbon credits are a way for forest landowners to take advantage of the fact that trees are a really powerful carbon sink. So over a given period of time, say 5 or 10 years, forests can sequester carbon dioxide, which is a planet-warming greenhouse gas, and forest carbon credits are a way to compensate forest landowners for adopting forest land management practices that can increase that amount of sequestration taking place. And here in Maine, forests cover 89% of the state, so they're quite abundant. And unlike in other parts of the country, forests are not facing existential threats from things like wildfires or other natural disasters. And so, at least in the near term, they're a relatively good thing to invest in.
So your story actually highlights how a forest landowner needs to really understand exactly how much carbon their trees are capable of storing before they can actually take part in this market. It's something that could be a barrier to small-scale forest landowners. So what's being done to address that possible barrier?
That's right. So in order for forest carbon credits to work, they really hinge on super precise calculations about how much carbon a particular area of forest can store over a given period of time. But doing these calculations is really expensive, especially for, as you pointed out, these small sort of family forest landowners who might be looking after dozens or hundreds of acres of forest land rather than thousands or tens of thousands of acres of forest land. And so in the state of Maine, there are a handful of forest carbon developers that act as intermediaries between forest landowners and the corporations that might be looking to invest in carbon credits in order to offset their emissions. These small group of forest carbon developers work directly with landowners to do these measurements up front and then match them with investors who want to invest in carbon credits. There's a startup called Renoster, it's based in Maine, that is looking to make this upfront calculation part cheaper. And the way they're doing that is by using data to do sky-based forest calculations rather than land-based forest calculations. So that looks like relying on a technology called LiDAR, which is scanning imagery, sort of lasers that come down from the sky to take these really precise measurements of trees. They can get information about tree height and statistics about the forest canopy rather than doing it on the ground. Now, these LiDAR instruments can be mounted to satellites flown by NASA, all the way to drones that fly over a canopy on, a day-to-day basis.
So Maine actually received some federal funding for this initiative in 2022, but funding priorities we've discovered of the Trump administration vary certainly from the Biden administration. So are there concerns over funding running out like it has for some other environmental projects?
Yes, so the LiDAR technology that I just mentioned, some of those instruments are on NASA satellites that are orbiting the Earth. There are concerns as NASA faces pretty significant budget cuts under the Trump administration that in the future it could become more difficult to access and work with the data coming from those LiDAR instruments. And then here in the state of Maine, Maine received some funding in 2022 to launch forest carbon incentives for these small landowners to participate in the forest carbon market. Now, officials that I spoke with at the state level are operating under the assumption that that funding is going to come through. It's from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, but like many other sources of funding, it's given on a reimbursement basis. And so right now we don't quite know because the state hasn't started billing yet for that funding. It expects to launch the forest carbon incentive programs later this year, so we will see.
Okay, lots to talk about there. All right, Julia, thank you so much for coming in. We appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. And you can read the full story and a whole lot more at the-maine-monitor.org.